Hi, folks. Welcome to Participles, Chapter 14 of Duff. I've given you on Moodle a couple of sets of slides, and one of them was a preview or a refresher of everything we covered in Chapter 7 about participles, just to remind us about things like moods and what are participles. And then the second set of slides sort of summarizes Chapter 14. So there are, slides part 1, slides part 2. But I thought maybe it would be also good to receive the information in a different way. So I'm going to make a little video that kind of echoes what the slides part 2 talk about. Participles. Until this point, we've just been tentatively using them here and there, but only in the masculine nominative format. Well, surprise, surprise, there are more forms of participles than just that. So chapter 14 gives you the rest, gives you everything else you're going to need to know about participles. So what are some of the important things to think about now that we've seen the whole chart with all of the different participles? How do they work? What are they useful for? What are the tricky parts? What do we do with them? First thing to think about is they are one of the moods. Greek has 5 moods, and participles are one of them. So for a long time in this textbook, we didn't know about moods because we were only using one. We were using the indicative mood, which is the mood that a language uses to make a statement or ask a question, like a typical sentence, the dog ate the biscuit, or did the dog eat the biscuit? Those are in the indicative mood. Another mood, the second mood, is the imperative. That's the mood that issues commands. Do this, don't do that, stop doing this, listen. All of those are imperative, so that's the second mood. The third mood is the infinitive mood, which is just sort of the name of a verb. It's translated in English as to something, to verb, to eat. Do you want the dog to eat the biscuit? That to eat is in the infinitive. And then a fourth mood, which we probably won't cover in first year, is the subjunctive mood, which is the mood that shoves things into the unknown, such as I may pass my exam, I might pass my exam, that kind of thing. So subjunctive, we might not get to it this year. But so the final mood, which we are definitely getting to this chapter, is participles. So participles are one of the 5 moods in Greek. Ancient Greek loves participles. It is a very participial language. You really need to understand participles in order to read the New Testament in Greek and translate it for yourself. Lots of times you can tell by weird English translations that try to be more literal where the participles are in Greek, because they'll be translated with ing words, like having heard this, the disciples ran away, or those constructions in Greek where we wouldn't necessarily write a sentence like that in English. The ones having heard this will be happy. Those kinds of ing constructions usually point to a participle in Greek. So you'll hear this said, and the textbook says it too, that participles are kind of like verbal adjectives. Verbal adjectives. What does that mean? We'll talk about that. Another thing that it's important to remember is what tense means for participles. There's only one mood in Greek where the tense relates to the time, and that is the indicative mood. So in the indicative mood, which is the main mood we did for half of the year, the dog ate the biscuit, the dog eats the biscuit. There, the dog ate the biscuit would be aorist. The dog eats the biscuit or is eating the biscuit would be present. There, in the indicative mood, present means happening now. Aorist means it happened in the past. But for all of the other moods, tense, as in present tense or aorist tense or future tense, they don't relate to time. They relate to something called aspect. So, my laptop's going to die. I just have to plug it in. So, for participles, just like every other mood, are a place to remember that seeing a participle in the aorist or seeing a participle in the present doesn't mean, oh, happened in the past, is happening now. Instead, aorist and present tell us something different about participles that doesn't relate to time. So if in general a participle is translated with an ing word, like luo is the untie is the verb we always use. So untying. Then if you see a participle in the present, it usually translates as untying. But if you see a participle in the aorist, it usually translates as having untied. What's a better way to say that? I'll think about it and come back to it. So, what does your participle chart look like? It has a whole bunch of present participles and a whole bunch of aorist participles. And so the present has 3 columns, the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. And the aorist has 3 columns, the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. And then within those columns, each column has singular and plural. And each column has the cases, so nominative, accusative, genitive, and dative for both singular and plural. So basically you've got 6 columns to memorize. You've got the present, masculine, singular, plural, the present, neuter, singular, plural, the present, feminine, singular, plural, and then the same again for the aorist. For participles, present means the participle is happening simultaneously with the main verb in the sentence. And for aorist, you see a participle in the aorist and it tells you that the participle is happening, but it happened before the main verb in the sentence. So that is what tense means when it comes to participles. Present means happening at the same time, and aorist means happening in sequence. Let me think of a quick example in English. Let's think of a cat attacking a bird. So we've got seeing, the cat sees the bird, and we've got attacking, the cat attacks the bird. So if attack is the main verb in the sentence, then seeing, if we want to say that the cat first saw the bird and then attacked it, which tense do we want to use? Do we want to use present or aorist if the two things are happening in sequence? First the seeing and then the attacking. We want to use aorist. So for the aorist participle of seeing and then attacking would be like, having seen the bird, the cat attacked it. But if we wanted to say something else is going on and then the cat was seeing the bird and attacking it at exactly the same time, which doesn't make as much sense, then we'd use a present participle and it would be like, seeing the bird, the cat attacked it, if that makes any sense. Present for participles means the action in the participle is a process going on at the same time as the action in the main verb, and aorist for participles means the action in the participle occurred before the action in the main verb. So that's tense in participles. Now, question. Why are participles like the magical unicorns of the Greek language? Do 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 participles like the magical unicorns of the Greek language. Ding! It's because they both conjugate like verbs and decline like nouns. So usually verbs conjugate. Nouns decline. So when you parse a verb, you've got to tell me things like, what tense is it in? Is it a second person, first person, or third person? That kind of thing. If you parse a noun, you've got to tell me the gender and the case and the number. So usually verbs do the conjugations, nouns do the declensions, but participles are like magical uniforms because they are verbs, like they are action words, but they can act like adjectives describing a noun, or like adverbs describing another verb, or they can even act full on like nouns on their own. So they decline. Even though they are action words, they decline because whatever word they're describing, they have to match it. If a participle is describing a noun, it has to match the noun in case, gender, and number. But they still have tense, so they can still be present or aorist like verbs. When we learned nouns, we finally ended up learning, when all nouns were finally revealed, we learned that there were 3 noun declensions, 3 styles of endings, 3 families of endings for nouns. Well, participles have 2. There are 2 participle declensions. They decline like adjectives do. So first we learned adjectives that are like agathos. Some participles do what agathos does when it declines. And the second type, remember we just recently learned pas-pas-a-pan? The second type of participle declines like pas-pas-a-pan. And you just have to memorize which words decline one way or the other way, just like with other adjectives or other verbs. You have to know which style it is. In your textbook on page 55, you can see agathos, and on page 148, you can see pas-pas-a-pan to refresh the 2 different types of endings that participles have. Remember earlier when I said that a participle it's a verb, like it's an action verb, action word, describes an action, but it can also kind of modify a noun or modify a verb. So it can be like an adjective or like an adverb. Well, I said it can also be a noun. A substantive participle, usually with a definite article, can just be a noun. So if you see the participle untying and it has a definite article with it, the untying, but there's no noun that it's modifying, it is being the noun. So you have to supply the noun based on the gender of the ending of the participle. So if it says ha untying, that's a masculine singular article with a masculine singular participle. So you translate it as the untying one, the untying person, the one who unties, the person who unties, or because it's masculine, you could say the man who unties, if we happen to know from context that it is actually a male person. Same way, if it was hey plus participle, then you would know, okay, it's feminine, so could be the untying one, or the untying person, or the person who unties, or the woman who's untying, or the untying woman, etc., etc. We already looked at that with adjectives, how adjectives can become substantive and just be nouns if they appear with a definite article and there's no other noun to be found. Exactly the same thing with participles. Like when we saw, one of our first adjectives we learned was agathos, and we saw ha agathos could be translated as the good man. Even though literally it just means the good, that definite article alerts us that it's behaving substantively, so we can provide the noun, like the good person, the good one. If it were neuter, we could say the good thing. Same exact thing with participles. I think I'm going to stop there. So this little chit chat goes through your main slides for participles, and it sort of summarizes everything you need to know about chapter 14, except that obviously I can't memorize those endings for you. But if you do look at your participle chart with the 6 different columns, you'll realize that everything looks quite familiar. So it's not just out of the blue, it's endings that make a lot of sense based on what we know from Greek so far. Okay, I'll stop there. Good luck!